My group of friends and I went to a local county haunted house attraction. It was by the edge of town and opened every October. Appropriately, it was situated right by the woods and had 3 attractions: the main haunted house, a corn maze, and a haunted trail through the woods. I guess I'll name my friends now: Rod, James, and Bud. That's not his real name, just his nickname. We started with the haunted house, which was decently high quality and had a few good scares, and then we made our way to the corn maze. The corn maze started out kind of slow, with just a lot of turns through the corn we had to make. But then the scary antics began. A guy dressed as a freaky scarecrow emerged from the corn and screamed at us, causing us to scream as well. He started to chase after us, and we ran. I was in the back, of course, and the scarecrow was right behind me. Even knowing it's just a paid actor, you have this innate fear of something chasing after you, where you just feel like you have to run away. Somehow, through the thrill of running away through the corn, I lost all of my friends. It seemed like all of us ran in different directions. I lost the scarecrow man, though, and got back to the trail between the crops. This is where the nightmare began. I called, yelled, and screamed for my friends as I made wrong turn after wrong turn. They never called back. In fact, it seemed there were no other visitors in sight. I had to finish the maze by myself. What choice did I have? I walked and walked for what felt like 20 minutes and heard bustling in the corn in front of me. I slowed my pace and kind of tiptoed past the noise, but it was pointless. Something reached out from the corn and grabbed my wrist and squeezed it tight. I actually cried out in pain and yelled, "Stop, you're hurting me." I was in shock at how hard this paid actor was squeezing my wrist. Then he tried pulling me into the crops. I didn't see who it was. I just saw his hand and arm covered by a black coat sleeve and black glove. I yanked myself out from the grip and backed away as the actor came out from the crops into the path. He was wearing a heavy winter coat, black jeans, and a blank black face mask. I didn't know what the costume was supposed to be, but I literally yelled, "Go yourself, you actually hurt me." He started running at me, and naturally, I turned and ran as fast as I could through the corn to lose him. I yelled back, "I'm reporting you," and I quickly lost him. After 5 minutes of running straight through the corn as opposed to following the maze of trails, I came to the edge of the maze and went to find an employee. I reported the actor to the employee, saying he used way too much force to the point that my wrist actually hurt. The employee said he wasn't sure who was wearing the specific costume I described, but that he'd look into it. I thanked him, and then I looked at my phone. I had a missed call from James. I called him back to ask where the 3 of them were. He said they tried finding me, then gave up and went to the haunted trail in the woods. I said I'd meet them and hung up. I walked over to the start of the trail, where they had the Halloween ambience blasting through a bunch of speakers placed throughout. I stepped into the woods, feeling like I was the only one around besides my friends. I tried playing catch up to my friends when I stopped in my tracks after spotting him again blocking the path. It was the guy in the coat and black mask. He didn't even give me time to react or say something. Right away, he started legit charging full speed at me. I turned right and ran into the woods, expecting to lose him easier this time. I called back, "I'm calling the police." I wasn't actually, but I thought that might get this guy to just leave me alone. I ran deeper into the woods until I didn't hear him chasing me anymore. Then I sat down on the root of a tree to catch my breath. I had time to think, and one of my thoughts was, did that guy really follow me from the corn maze to here? Then I heard footsteps approaching, and of course, at that exact moment, my iPhone started ringing. I silenced my phone, but now the footsteps had stopped. I pushed myself up off the root quietly and leaned to the side to get a view past the tree. It looked clear. I started to run back towards the path of the attraction and immediately spotted him to my right. I said to myself, "Screw it." I stopped and told him, "I'm suing the place because of you," but he didn't stop running at me. He got to me and pushed me to the floor. I didn't expect it. I was once again in shock. I got back up as fast as I could before he could get on top of me and booked it. He chased me, but when I got back to the path towards the entrance of the attraction, he stopped and turned around. I went straight to the little front office shack and asked for a manager. Some older guy greeted me, and I told him about the guy who was chasing me and attacking me. The man said they didn't have any actors wearing that specific attire. So he called the police. Eventually, I got my friends to meet me where I was. I stayed to describe the incident to the police when they showed up. I didn't have any marks to show them, but they still took a report, and the place was closed for the night. We all went home after that. I haven't been to any haunted attractions ever since. This took place a while ago when I was 14. It happened on Halloween. One of my friends and I had plans to go trick-or-treating that night. Now, I realize 14 is a bit old to still be trick-or-treating, but my friend and I figured we still had 1 year left in us. We lived in a really nice neighborhood. However, this meant that there was about an acre of front yard for each house, so it took about 3 minutes to walk between each door. But this was made up for in the number of full-sized candy bars we were given. The neighborhood basically got its reputation as one filled with a ton of rich older people who would all give out full-size candy bars. Because of this, it wasn't unusual to have a lot of other people come from nearby neighborhoods to trick-or-treat. Anyway, my friend and I had been trick-or-treating for around an hour when we came across this one house. It had an old white van parked in the driveway, and the house itself was a lot older than most of the other houses in the neighborhood. But we could tell the house had lights on inside and even some small Halloween decorations hung up outside, so we figured the people inside of it were likely to be handing out candy. Once we got to the front door, we rang the doorbell. After a few seconds, a middle-aged man dressed in a Scream costume opened the door. At first, my friend and I were both excited. Typically, if the house owner was dedicated enough to dress up in costume, we could be sure we were in for some tastier candy. We both said, "Trick or treat," and the guy handed us our candy without saying anything. I don't even remember what candy we were given, but what I do remember is what happened next. We said thank you and started walking off, but the guy told us to wait. He said he had more for us, but that we had to come inside and wait while he went to go get it. It was odd, but we were 14 and figured free candy was free candy. We walked inside and were met with a full wall of Polaroid pictures of different children in Halloween costumes. The man then came around the corner with a camera and explained how he always liked to take photos of the kids every Halloween because he loved seeing their different costumes. My friend and I looked at each other and back at the man. I said we shouldn't and that we should get going because our moms were waiting for us in the car. This wasn't true, but I didn't feel comfortable in that situation. It was honestly really creepy. The guy didn't say anything and just looked at us with his Scream mask as we walked back outside. As we were walking down the driveway, I glanced back at the front door. The man was just standing there, still looking at us, completely motionless. We tried to forget the whole situation as we continued trick-or-treating. 30 minutes in, and we'd practically forgotten all about it, but that's when we noticed a lone white van parked on the street in front of us. This instantly made me think back to the van in that guy's driveway just 30 minutes ago. We slowed our pace a bit, both realizing there was a chance that it was the same van, a small chance, but still. Once we walked past it, it shifted out of park and into drive, now slowly inching behind us. We tried to calm down, reasoning that it was most likely just some parents driving their kids from house to house. This was more common than you would think, as like I mentioned earlier, the houses were a good 3-minute walk from each other. When we got to the next house, we noticed the van parked somewhere behind us. We waited a bit, and that's when we realized there were no kids getting out of that van. It had to have been the same guy from earlier. Dude, what do we do? We were only 10 minutes away from my house at this point, so I responded saying we should make a run for it. My friend agreed, and right as we booked it, the van did the same. We were now 100% positive this guy was following us. I looked behind us and the van was literally right there. We weren't gonna outrun this thing. There was no chance if we stayed next to the road. And we both knew this. So, we jumped a fence and cut through a field that ultimately led to my house's backyard. When we got there, we ran inside and locked all the doors. We had lost the guy. I still occasionally think about this encounter from time to time. This is by far the most disturbing thing I have ever experienced, and it would mark the last time I would ever go trick-or-treating. It was Halloween weekend, and it was falling on a Saturday this year. My mom always takes decorations and giving out candy very seriously. It's almost like she has to compete with the neighbors to have the most sought-after house to trick-or-treat at. We live on a corner in a regular suburban neighborhood, so when we're decorating, we also decorate the side of the house too. Since Halloween was a Saturday this year, kids started trick-or-treating earlier in the day. However, it was a cloudy, cold day, and there was a chance of rain in the forecast. My mom apparently couldn't understand that this may have been a factor as to why there weren't many trick-or-treaters out. Instead, after a few trick-or-treaters seemingly skipped our house, she assumed it was because there weren't enough decorations out to attract the trick-or-treaters. She told me to go get whatever containers were left in the attic containing decorations. I insisted this wasn't necessary, but she insisted otherwise and forced me to. So I went up to the attic, which is directly above my bedroom. The attic door is in the hallway upstairs. I pulled down the door and climbed up the ladder. We had the holiday containers sorted a specific way, so I went over to where the Halloween containers were. There were only a couple still left up there. I opened one to see what was inside and said good enough. I started dragging the container out towards the attic door, then I carefully slid the container down the ladder. As I was about to climb down out of the attic, I thought I heard something on the opposite side of the attic, like a piece of wood cracking under the weight or pressure of something. I looked over to the wall of containers in the far corner. It's an attic, though, so the sound of wood snapping or cracking really wasn't that weird. I climbed down out of the attic and brought the decorations downstairs. From there, my mom and I put out some more decorations in the front yard. It was really windy and felt like rain at any second. There really weren't many trick-or-treaters at all. My mom was disappointed because she goes all out with the candy too. She's always been one of those people. There really weren't many trick-or-treaters at all. My mom was disappointed because she goes all out with the candy too. She's always been one of those people who makes a bunch of homemade goodie bags with a bunch of different candies inside. I could see how upset she was that she wasn't going to give most of them away at this rate. The day progressed, and I was in my room playing video games on my laptop while my mom was downstairs in the living room and kitchen handing out candies to the few trick-or-treaters that would come. And then it started to rain, and that pretty much put a damper on the rest of the day, trick-or-treaters wise. I was gaming in my room when I heard a crack from above my room in the attic again. Not really abnormal, but I made a mental note that that was the second time I heard something from up there. The rest of the day was rainy, and that night it turned into a thunderstorm, perfect for Halloween night. I used to be a big gamer in my teens, and so instead of going out with friends on a Saturday night, I would often just stay in playing video games. Unfortunately, this night was no exception to that. I stayed up really late into the night past my parents. It was still raining outside. Then I heard something above me again. This time it sounded like footsteps. I was wondering if my mom was in the attic putting stuff away, but it was late at night. I sat and listened for a while. The sound stopped. I would often just stay in playing video games. Unfortunately, this night was no exception to that. I stayed up really late into the night past my parents. It was still raining outside. Then I heard something above me again. This time it sounded like footsteps. I was wondering if my mom was in the attic putting stuff away, but it was late at night. I sat and listened for a while. The sound stopped. I paused my game and went out into the hallway. After a couple of minutes, I saw the attic door was open. I now heard noises from downstairs in the kitchen. I heard the sound of things being moved around in the fridge. My heart was racing now. I tiptoed down the hall to my parents' room and quietly opened the door when I saw both my parents fast asleep in bed. I felt my stomach twist and I felt sick. I quietly closed the door and went up to my dad to shake him awake. He woke up easily, and I whispered to him, "There's someone in the house." He immediately sat up and said, "What?" I said, "There's someone in the kitchen right now in the fridge. I think they're hiding in the attic." My dad is not a large or confrontational man. He keeps a police baton under his bed in case of an emergency, but I don't think he ever thought he'd have to actually use it. My dad told me to stay quiet. He went to go look out into the hall quietly. When he came back inside, he whispered that he saw someone down the hall climbing into the attic. He shut the bedroom door, locked it, and then called 911. By now, my mom was awake too, but we all stayed as quiet as possible and didn't freak out. It was now a waiting game until the police showed up. My dad went downstairs to open the front door. The attic door was now shut. The police had to go inside, and they found some homeless-looking man hiding in the corner behind that wall of containers. The sounds I was hearing were, in fact, from a person the whole time. The man, while seeming dirty and kind of scary looking, apparently was very straightforward and honest that he simply walked in when he saw the front door was open the day before and he had no place to sleep. He brought one of our blankets up there, and there was a jar of peanut butter up there too that he was eating. The whole thing is still very disturbing, and I wonder how things would have played out if I or my father confronted the man instead of the police. My parents didn't press any charges. Halloween night, I don't know what year it was, but it was probably like 4 years ago, and it was a Saturday. I'll keep this short and to the point. My friend Jamie and I were set on doing something scary that night, and that ended up being a visit to the abandoned house way up the road from our campus. It was at the top of the hill, and some students referred to it as the Blair Witch House simply because it's all by itself on an enclosed property and it had been abandoned for years. So come 10 o'clock, Jamie drove us all the way up the road and parked his car in the dirt outside of the property. We walked up the hill to the house, and even just seeing the unlit house standing in the dark gave me goosebumps. We both came with backpacks full of tools like flashlights and knives, just in case, and he even brought a crowbar. Surprisingly, he didn't need it though because the front door was already cracked open. This is where the flashlights came in because, of course, the inside was as dark as it gets. The house seemed to be scrapped for just about everything because nothing was left except junk, nothing very exciting. Then there was a thump from upstairs. Jamie and I looked at each other, and we agreed to go upstairs and check it out. He led the way up the stairs, which were extremely rickety. He got to the top, and there was a small hall with 3 doors. We passed the first room, which was a tiny bedroom with an old collapsed bed frame still in there. There was a second door on the left. This one led to an empty bathroom. There was one more door, this one on the right of the hall. We stepped inside. This bedroom was definitely the master bedroom. There was a bed frame sitting in the center of the room. There was once carpet on this wood floor, which had apparently been ripped away over the years. We stepped fully inside the room, looking for what could have made the thumping sound. Then the door to the room slammed shut. There was suddenly a white flash that filled the room, then another. It seemed like camera flashes. Jamie screamed and opened the door back up to flee the room. I did the same. Neither of us looked for whoever was in there with us in the moment. We were way too scared. We ran back to the car, and Jamie drove us back to campus. A week later, Jamie sent me a picture through text. He was holding a photograph. In the picture, it was of the 2 of us in that bedroom of the house. He said they were left under his windshield wiper in the parking lot of our dorm building. I told him to throw them away and park somewhere else from now on. We only told a few close friends about this, and we never went near that house again. Thanks for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to watch the latest videos.